everybody. Good evening. We're going to start the Springboro Board of Education meeting for Thursday, August 8th, 2013, and I need you to do a roll call.
Bowles?
Yes, here.
Joni? Miller? Regano?
Here. Okay, would everybody please stand for the pledge of allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Miller, I need a second. Mrs. Cole. Okay, any additions, any changes, comments?
Just so the public knows, if you have the agenda, I have already removed item 11.6.
So you removed that one.
I will do that or before we start recording.
I'd have to refresh to get that. All right, anything else? Okay, roll call.
Miller?
Yes.
Poole? Yes. Bowles?
Yes. Okay, we have agenda item 2.1, Springboro Education Association report.
Springboro Education Association, nothing to report.
Okay, welcome. We have 2.2, Springboro Classified Employees Association report.
Kathy Beller, nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. And public participation prearranged. We have one speaker prearranged tonight, and that's Woody Crossway.
Hi, my name is Woody.
I need your address
180 Cedar Hill Lane.
in 3 minutes.
Chair, my wife and I have lived in Springboro for many years and love our community. I'm here to lend support for the Springboro School Board's high level of interest in the fostering of critical thinking among our students. Over the last few weeks, a great deal of discussion has taken place over the merits of a class on the Constitution. Other discussions involving the presentation of creationism as an alternative view to our existence has also drawn criticism and opposition. I stand in support of these classes and hope that they will be offered to the community in the future. In the spirit of critical thinking, I also support the introduction of creationism as an elective in our schools. We may not always view the phrase critical thinking in terms of a formal definition, as one may find in a dictionary. We do, however, enter into critical thinking exercises in many ways throughout each day. Critical thinking appears at the forefront of our everyday lives as we read food labels to determine what could be healthier food choices, as we analyze the latest movies or books through the lens of our personal tastes and experiences, and even in the gathering of information regarding world events, how best to interpret those events, and how they impact our lives. There are standardized and generally accepted criteria for determining the processes by which students may be challenged to think critically about that which they learn and the means by which they become parts of larger segments of their society and culture. Robert A. Jennis of the University of Illinois has listed on the website criticalthinking.net, and he provides these elements that define and identify the processes by which we may enter into practical and applied critical thinking. Some of his points regarding that which comprises critical thinking are, and I quote, "A critical thinker is open-minded and mindful of alternatives, desires to be and is well-informed, judges well the credibility of sources, identifies reasons, assumptions, and conclusions, asks appropriate clarifying questions, judges well the quality of an argument, including its reasons, assumptions, evidence, and their degree of support for the conclusion, can well develop and defend a reasonable position regarding a belief or an action doing justice to challenges, formulates plausible hypotheses, and integrates all of the above aspects of critical thinking," end quote. While the term critical thinking may generally point us to that which rests in the philosophical or ideological, would not the processes Mr. Ennis lists also take us even further and deeper into the areas that touch or come close to touching the scientific method. For time's sake, I won't list the scientific method. I'm sure you're all familiar with those. The critical thinking processes and those that allow science to communicate results are rooted in the asking of questions. Until we ask questions, we will be unable to arrive at answers. I would suggest that we consider an even more complex issue. What if there are occasions when we arrive at incorrect answers because we have failed to ask the correct questions? I would also suggest elements that can help us to not only think critically, but also yield a better understanding of that which is true. These elements will not be found in either the critical thinking processes or in the scientific method, but vital nonetheless. These elements are simply faith and trust. I would propose that we have faith in our school board and in each other. We are not at war with each other, nor are we so rooted and grounded in fear that we cannot trust in the integrity of honest persons who care deeply about the welfare of our students, both in the classroom and in the world they are becoming part of. Hearing other theories and opinions about and estimations of that which ultimately provides our foundation for living cannot be so feared that we lock ourselves in frames of mind that could, in fact, defeat the very goals we are all gathered together to support. There are viable, logical, and reasonable alternatives to issues we care deeply about. I close by asking that we lend our support to the school board's initiatives presented to us as we work together to at least consider all the information necessary for our students to think critically about a large range of issues. All of us will benefit greatly from the exchange.
Thank you. That being done, we have public participation, agenda item 2.4, public participation. And this is where you can come up and speak on any agenda item. Again, you have 3 minutes. You need to tell your name and address. So anybody interested in speaking on any agenda item?
Can I speak to an agenda item that was the previous speaker for public participation? Then I have nothing to say.
Okay. All righty, we have no treasurer's report. Okay. We're going to move on to agenda item 4.1, approval of exempt staff salary changes. Do you need to present anything?
No.
It'll be a short meeting.
Well, it's.
Our
you have on
superintendent
board docs, the two
doesn't
different things.
Yeah, it's all on it. Yep, we've had a chance to see it. Nobody commented on that. So I need a motion to approve 4.1, approval of the exempt staff salary changes.
So,
Mr. Miller, I need a second. Mrs. Cole? Any discussion? Questions?
clarify who the exempt staff is, that we, administrative assistants, central office, our technology people, that's not administrative.
Right. So that's anybody that fits into a category, non-administrative category, and not covered by one of the negotiated agreements. Okay, so those other, and I think essentially what that agreement is that they get what the others got.
Correct.
So, roll call?
Miller,
Yes.
Yes. Folds? Yes. Okay, agenda item 5.1, approval of AP chemistry textbook. I need a motion to approve. So moved. It's gonna be the same. Mrs. Cole, I need a second. Mr. Miller, any discussion? Questions? Looks good. So roll call?
Poole,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Folds.
Yes. Right, agenda item 6.1, approval of personnel items. Mrs. Vincent?
Good evening. I'd like to have the following items for the personnel report to be approved. Items 1 through 3 are certified resignations. Items 4 through 25 are to employ certified employees. Items 26 through 29 are approval of the supplemental personnel for athletics. 30, approval to employ exempt substitute, and 31, approval to employ a classified substitute.
Okay, I need a motion to approve those items.
So moved.
Mrs. Cole, I need a second. Mr. Miller, and any discussion or questions? Roll call?
Poole,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Folds.
Yes. 6.2, approval of consultant contract.
This contract is to approve for a consultant contract for Title I reading at Dennis Elementary.
And then motion to approve the consultant contract?
And that person's contract, all will be paid out of Title I funds, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I got a motion from Mr. Miller and a second from Mrs. Cole. Discussion, roll call?
Miller,
Yes.
Cool, Cole,
Yes. 6.3, approval of summer boys basketball camp workers. Anybody got to present on that? Nothing to say?
There's all next page.
Okay. Motion to approve? Mr. Miller, I need a second. I can second one of these times, just to mix it up, I can do the second. Roll call?
Miller,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Cole.
Yes. 6.4, approval of Springboro High School Band Camp Workers. I need a. So moved. Okay. You got it?
Got it.
Okay. Mr. Miller, did you second that?
He did.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call.
Cool,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Cole.
Yes. 6.5, approval of extended days for elementary assistant principals. Need a motion to approve? I'll second. Just so mix it up. Okay, any discussion? Roll call?
Cool,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Okay, 6.6, approval of extended days for high school principal. Need a motion to approve? Mr. Miller. Second. Second, Mrs. Cole. Discussion? Roll call.
Miller,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Cole.
Yes.
I'll get you in a minute. No, I'll have them on the next one.
Oh, yeah. We can put it together. All right, so I just got back on my items. I'm gonna break up. Speeding through here before Petroni got here.
That train went off the tracks.
I can leave.
David, I haven't even said a word yet, already getting going.
Okay, well, agenda item 7.1, approval of Clear Creek cafeteria roof change order. Can you describe that?
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, members of the board, Clear Creek, the cafeteria was a project that was project that was approved back in June. And unfortunately, when they started doing the roof repair, one of their workers fell through the roof. It's an old gypsum roof from the 1960s that had had a lot of water damage throughout the years. And so as they started taking off the roof membrane and the insulation, the roof decking was just crumbling under them. So we had to do a needed change order, verbal change order for them to continue work. They have since taken all the roof membrane up as well as all of the gypsum roofing underlayment, but put down 22 gauge steel for the roof decking, and they had to get it watertight. With all the rain today, it would have been ugly if we hadn't done that. So that change order is in the neighborhood of $37,000.
Just what it is.
That's right.
I need a motion to approve the change order for Clear Creek cafeteria roof. That was Mr. Petroni. Any second? Mr. Miller, any discussion, any questions? Yeah, is the gentleman okay that fell?
He broke his elbow, but even the workers that were there when I've checked every day haven't talked to him since, so. I know he had a broken elbow there. Not our workers' comp.
I feel like if you felt it would be
Okay, so I need any further questions, guys? Roll call.
Troni,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. Okay, 8.1, approval of pay to participate fees. And that schedule is, it's not on your agenda probably, but it's high school, is it? Right, high school is 260, junior high is 160, band is 225, color guard is 125. I need a motion to approve. district service program, where the students are eligible for up to $100 refund for 10 hours of service for a high school student. That's included in that proposal. So I need a motion to approve 8.1, pay to participate fees. Mrs. Cole, I need a second.
Second.
Mr. Petroni, any further discussion? Roll call?
Poole,
Yes.
Crony,
Yes.
Bull,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Okay, 8.2, approval of 2013-2014 school fees. And they are listed on, are they listed on your agenda?
They're attached to the agenda.
I mean, I've got them, I just didn't know if we need to read it.
They didn't answer them, yes.
And basically, should we give a synopsis of what they are? A summary? In previous years, I mean, part of our debate over the last few weeks has been, what is a fair student fee list? And so Mr. Petrie and his administrative staff have researched other schools to find out what other schools charge for and what they charge. And we knew that for the last, I don't know how many years, our fees were easily 2 times what the surrounding districts charged, if not more than that. And so we were trying to investigate why that was. And the proposal came down that we should go ahead and remove paper fees and remove the activity fees. And I think the question and conversation was all about, do you have to have paper to teach children in the classroom? And I think the answer was yes. So that is money that should come out of the general fund then, if it's money we have to teach children. And then the other conversation was about the activity fees. And again, those are for a variety of supplementals. And the question was, do we need those supplemental positions to teach children? And the answer again was yes. So again, I think that's money that should come out of general funds. That was just my input. I don't know about anybody else, but that's money that we have to teach with. Materials and supplies we have to teach. It made sense then not to pass that on to parents because the other districts are not doing it. And one of the pieces of input I got from Jim Morgana, who asked me to give it to you if he wasn't here, he said that he looked through all the other schools that we did the homework on, and none of them had activity fees and none of them had paper fees. So he was in favor of, again, removing those from the parents' charges. Okay, anybody else?
If I could add, though, I will say this year, the principals, a lot of them aren't here now, but at the end of the year, the principals who were here brought the actual fees forward. We got them accurate, so they are a bill for building the building. So I think it's pretty accurate what we do now.
Kind of cleaned up the loose ends. Now everybody's charging for the same things, and it just makes a lot more sense now, right? Okay, any further discussion? Need a motion to approve?
We're a little backwards.
I know, sorry. I had to add that input there.
Do you wanna?
Go ahead. I still need a motion to approve.
I'll move to so I can discuss.
Need a second? Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess, I think from perspective, I'll give you a history lesson here, because it was before my time, I want to make sure everybody understands. The fees are going to be lower right now to parents, is that correct? By approving these fees, they're going to be lower this year?
Fees at the elementaries will be lower. I believe the fees at the high school will probably increase slightly. We're paying for the actual book. We're paying for the true cost of the book. Where in the past, the boards have just said, cut everything 25%.
So for, I'm sorry. So if I understand correctly, for 3 years, for some reason, fees that were charged created a surplus in building 018 accounts, which is 009 accounts.
Yeah, years ago, that surplus has been there for years.
And so 3 years ago, for the last 3 years, we were able to spend that surplus, which artificially reduced fees. And so until this year, it looks like we now have an accurate cost of everything in our fee schedule.
We had an accurate cost 2 years ago when we started the cuts, but because we had that surplus, we cut the fees 25%. They start using that surplus up.
So, but I also understood that most of our buildings had budgets for paper and things like that in them, is that correct?
Yes.
So our buildings had a budget for paper, yet we were charging for paper as a separate, is that?
Two buildings, and maybe it's a little different in the accounting side of it. Two buildings felt they were charging a paper fee, Dennis and Blackfoot's, while the other were not. And then some of the buildings were charging a ticket.
So we've now gotten this consistent, so today when we are absorbing the cost of paper and not passing that on, is it actually a cost that's gonna hurt our budget?
In Dennis and 5 Points, we'll have to put $15,000 each back in their budget, but the high school, the junior high, SI, they already have those in their budget. So in their building budget, not in a budget that will have to come out of this. And with this, especially at the high school, what a book costs is what we'll be charging parents.
That's the part we'll have to do. That doesn't make sure I understand when you say what a book costs. Are we talking like electives? Or are we talking for like a math book? Or what are we talking?
Well, they're all listed here. I mean, yes, some of them, they're both. For example, the English courses, the computer lab courses, the art course, the music course. What happened in the past was the cost of the computer application book was $10. That was reduced 25%. So that was part of the surplus was picking up that $2.50. Now the cost of that book is $10, so it will cost $10 to a parent.
That's how I'm reading this. That's for elective courses. It's not for core courses. Unless I'm missing something.
So CP English
Yeah.
1, it costs $20 for the workbook.
Right. World history.
Consumable.
Consumable.
pieces of it.
Yes.
I just want to, it sounds like
Not
we're
the
charging, it sounds like we're
textbook.
charging people for textbooks.
No, it's not the
That's
textbooks,
where I'm
it's
going.
consumable books.
Okay, so why are you saying that it would be more when, you know, I've got 3 that graduated and 2 still in there in the high school, I'm just talking about the high school. And I'm looking at, it doesn't sound like it would be more if we're removing the activity fee, which was in there before, and we're removing the paper fee, which was in there before, and the book price was only reduced 25%, it should still be a little less.
It might be, but I don't want to promise high school parents that it's going to be less.
Depends on the course.
It will depend on the courses their students take.
Well, let me ask you this, I see here an accounting 2 workbook for $109, so if your child was taking the accounting and needed the second workbook, that's $109. Well, I think I would discourage my kid, I mean, sometimes I worry that the price tag on some of this workbook or consumables might keep people from taking the course, and then there's $80 for the accounting 1 workbook. And I didn't know some of these were so expensive. I get the, $20, $25, $3, $20, $7, $4.60.
But those were charged last year with a 25% reduction, right?
So the 109 was charged last year?
Yes,
So-
25%. Wow. And that class is an elective.
Which these fees are very common. I should say.
Really?
Books are expensive, very expensive.
A little glad
These are
mine
the
are
consumable.
science
Workbooks.
ones.
Right.
They're not charging for people to use our textbooks here. It's
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I wouldn't have known that from looking at this. I'm glad that was clear.
No, and part of the high school budget, the textbooks that Mr. Miller's talking about, you'll see on there that we needed to purchase more of those this year. They were lost and they needed to be repurchased, or we were getting more kids into certain subjects. That's why that was in the high school budget. So those weren't necessarily textbook adoptions. Those are replacements to adoptions that we already had.
Right, and it's a building leader's responsibility to replace books when necessary. So if there's a
Correct.
problem that a teacher has, then it should be a building leader's responsibility to fix that problem. So if a kid's got something that's outdated or old, it wouldn't be a board's directive.
Well, not outdated. When we get into outdated, that would be a new textbook adoption. That would be the district's responsibility. And that's what we're working on with the money that's in the 5-year forecast. However, the book that's adopted, if it becomes tattered or torn or whatever, then it's the building principal's responsibility to make sure that's replaced.
And the well, we're getting off the side tangent, maybe I'll bring it up a little later. I guess the only other question on the activity fee, if we're gonna absorb the activity fee again, didn't have a decision at a budget and finance committee on these. This is the board making this decision tonight because we punted, as you recall, last week in workshop. We gave 3 recommendations or 3 choices, and it looks like we're choosing combining, reducing, or eliminating the paper fee and eliminating an activity fee as part of the decision tonight as well. Aaron, so that was one of the 3 options that the committee recommended. As committees only recommend, they don't make decisions. But is that, we didn't analyze that activity fee, so again, same question, is there a budget impact substantial budget impact, or is that something that was also built into each building's number? Are we looking at $100,000 a year impact on activity fees?
The activity fee was not budgeted, it is just revenue that comes from the general fund to cover the cost of the supplementals.
But all the supplementals were budgeted. Every supplemental was budgeted within.
All the supplementals were budgeted, but that revenue was also budgeted to be coming in.
But it went into the 009 account. It
No,
didn't.
that revenue went into the general fund.
So there will be a $111,000 impact.
Well, not necessarily. With the efficiency plan, not a lot, but some of the supplementals were reduced, such as at Dennis, when we combined those two buildings. We no longer need 2 grade level leaders at each grade level. So just in those 2 buildings alone, that was probably easy $30,000, if not more. We had for example, the vocal music people at Dennis at 5 Points, they had 3 each, now they'll have 1. Because in essence, they do several concerts a year. None of the vocals or music was touched at the high school because it's just a different world in terms of how that works. Some of the offerings at the high school, such as, that was a language club after class or after school, those types of things. If the principals want those, they'll be able to pay for those. And a lot of the principals they're choosing not, they don't want to bring them back, they don't feel there's a need for them. So that fee probably would have covered those in the past, so it's not going to impact the general fund hardly at all, if any at all.
Can we add that to the agenda, just to look at the next budget committee, I think it's on the 16th, just to, are you able to put that analysis together?
She's already got it.
Okay.
If the supplemental, you may have seen that today, it'll say on your reduced from efficiency plan, so you can go through real quick and see how much each of those cost.
These, just from this, I just removed it.
Okay.
There's a difference.
Okay. And I would argue to that those fees, even if they are an impact, a budget impact, those are fees that should have come out of general funds all along. For some reason, they got passed on to parents, which is actually a duplicate because the taxpayers are paying that already for paper and those supplementals. And I felt like it should have been coming out of general funds all along. So it's not a new expense, it's just, shifting the burden to where it's due.
Well,
Those got added back when the play participate fee got added to the sports program, to the band. Looking back in the history, yeah, that's when it got added, back when we had your levy failure, and the play participate fee got added. That's when the activity fee was added.
I guess I just resonate your comment, or try to repeat your comment. You said that some of the programs that were being shifted to the building leader made a decision those programs are no longer necessary, which is fine. It just drives a question if everything's at a building level, even the cost at a building level, maybe that changes the thought process. Is that what you're saying, or just that program's really looked at and it really wasn't needed and we no longer need to offer it, versus we just pummel everything with the general revenue? I mean, I don't know if it's a philosophy or a cultural concept or what. I don't really know. You brought that up, so I'm just kind of trying to
Well, a lot
understand
of times when you're running a building, the kids get inspired in a certain way, they take off with a tangent or something, or when they're learning, a club will develop. And throughout the years, as these clubs develop, supplementals were created. So that's where some of those did come into place. However, our grade level leaders, things that we have to have, so I mean, especially at a high school. So it's increasingly important that we keep some of those. And some of the other ones are more student activity supplementals that should be paid out of the 018, which is a student activity account.
So like a club fee of sorts.
Correct.
Kind of.
And it's not something that's equally offered to all kids. It's a choice.
So though we take a general revenue for all activities and some students don't use activities, that means that all students are covering the cost of that. The general revenue is covering the cost of that activity.
Correct. Well, we charge an activity fee of $10 a child, and it's divided equally. That means every child will pay the fee in comparison.
Is there an analysis that we can, I mean, last year we were promised by the previous administration that they would go through and do most of the work that you've done here right now. So I appreciate your team getting that done, getting down to the real cost. But what I don't really know, if I understand, is if we really have, if everything that we're offering or everything that we're charging or everything we're absorbing in general revenue is right, or is there a better way of doing it? Is there something we can do between now and next May?
What we need to do is we actually need to, for example, if Mason charges $38 high. So, I mean, I've worked in a couple other districts, so, yeah, the fees are a little higher. However, all those fees aren't into our general fund either, so it just all depends how you look at it. But I think we need to do more of an analysis, which might mean we reduce some of the things that we're charging parents for even further.
Well,
Also have to look at is what's on the list of things we need parents buy and bring to school. Because I know catering fees are low, but I know my sister just went out and spent $85 just for a first grader on supply she has to bring to school.
Well, we do the same thing.
Because
We
it's-
have-
we have the same thing. That's why-
We have high
Well,
fees
she's
and
not-
high.
she's not done.
Supply fees.
So-
Well, I can tell you before.
But the toolbox is never that high for each grade level.
So,
Or there's something.
so I guess what I'm trying to think about, if a club has 30 children that participate, but yet the general revenue is covering the cost of that club, is it wrong or right? I don't know the right answer. Is it right to say if you want to join John Smith Club and it's $10 a child who joins that, and they all have their own set fees to be self-sustaining of a sort to cover that cost? Does that happen in anywhere? Is that something that happens? I mean, I don't know.
So is that what we're towards?
A lot of it would be, for example, either you front that supplemental to a teacher or a staff member, or you give a drop dead date of when they can apply for that. So if by May 13th, if we have 50 kids involved in this, then we'll be able to open it, because at that point, then we can declare supplemental and pay that person for it. We could go to that approach. That's a possibility.
Is that a good, I don't know if that's good or bad, but that sounds like if there's a need and a demand,
Correct.
there'd be a.
I mean, I've been thinking through some of those things like that, and that would be a possibility. It's a little more labor intensive. Then we would get into the issue, for example, if we did that with sports. We have low turnout in some sports. Some districts will close down the sports. But that's going to come back to you as a board, and you're going to have to make that determination, which I know you don't like to reduce things. So it's some discussions I think we need to have, what our options are.
Could we make a commitment to think through that by the next year and see if that's something, at least maybe add to this motion so there's actually a record?
That would be a good
I thought we looked at this in
one.
February.
What's that?
Is that what we?
January will be the first round of
Wait, does he have a child in one of the sports?
No, he won't be here.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure that out. I think
No hidden agenda, I'm just thinking.
part of my question was, and I'm glad Dave brought this up, was we have things that now would come out of general funds, which are like National Honor Society Advisor, we have a JCOWA Advisor, we have International Language Club Advisor, so I guess that's what we're talking about.
A couple of
These are,
those.
these are voluntary, extracurricular kind of clubs, and again, we've kind of said,
Not National
They need to
Honor
be
Society.
self-funded.
That would stay in there. National Honor
okay,
Society.
then the art club advisor, art
That
club
one's
coordinator,
Our coordinator is in
the DI, I thought we took that out
Yeah,
last
that
year, it pays for
there. It
itself.
pays for itself, just like
So-
Camp Kern.
So why do some of these other ones still have, I mean, if they're clubs, I mean, that's a good discussion to have, is if they're clubs, they're extracurricular clubs, they probably shouldn't come out of general funds, they should probably be self-funded unless there's some rationale for,
That, no,
yeah, I think that's a really good discussion to have about what is the requirement, or what do we expect the taxpayer to pay when they're paying for education? Is that a club that we feel that is primary to education?
it all comes back to the level of service discussion.
Well, and also keep it consistent, I mean, if my kids in the I'm paying for the but my kids in a different club, and it's all shared, as opposed to equitable payment.
Just trying to be fair across the board, yeah, that makes sense.
But that is one thing I do want to draw attention to, as you look at those school fees, the Denison 5%, it's like $109. Right, not paid, but nonetheless, that is Camp Kern, $159. The Camp Kern is $108 on its own, so that's why that fee is a little bit higher.
All right, well, I have a motion, so, any further discussion?
No, the catering supply lists are very similar to ours. I'm just looking at that.
So, yeah, you just can't get anything by her. You can look it up.
I just feel like screenshotters, like, oh, man, I'm not even done.
Those are huge discussions, though. That'll take multiple meetings for board members really to think through that.
Yeah, through what's the taxpayer's responsibility and what's the parent responsibility. That's a good discussion to have, because we've tried to hash through some of those, but obviously we haven't gotten through the whole packet. So,
I think it's just about being fair. You know, we just can't always keep pushing things out in a way where now we're taking things back. I mean, we had the activity fee added when there was lending needs, and now we're getting rid of the activity fee. I mean, did we ever really need to push that out as part of the conversation? So.
I mean, me personally, philosophically, and I don't push my own agenda very often, but I do think parents who have kids in school should pay a little more, because it keeps it out of our general fund, it keeps us off the ballot. So that's just me personally. I don't have a problem with fees, but I fully grasp and support your concept on reducing the activity fee and the paper fee. I get it, and it's understandable. I guess I'm for fees.
well, it's just the taxpayer's paying to educate the
Right,
kid,
you're right.
not the extras.
Right.
And when it's a parent's choice to do the extras, the parent should pay for that choice. But as I mentioned to you the other day, it's required by state law that I bring my kids to school and educate them.
Right.
So, and that's the whole system of taxation is set up to pay for that. If that's not an option for me, they have to be educated. So, but the extracurriculars, $1,000 a piece for band, that's a choice. And we can make the choice not to do it if we can't afford it to. So, but these textbooks are, I still struggle with that because that's not a choice. But if you're saying the consumables, the workbooks that are going to bring home and keep, that makes sense. Okay, so roll call?
Troni,
Yes.
Poole,
Yes.
Bowles,
Yes.
Miller.
8.3, board member comments. Mrs. Cole?
I don't really have any. Today I got to sit in on a conference call. I work in the mortgage business, and they were talking about marketing to, they referenced it as millennials. And it was kind of reaching the customer, and I found one of the things very interesting from the marketing standpoint was, they're using things like Twitter and Facebook, and a lot of these millennials are attracted by word of mouth referrals. They don't go for the marketing ploys that older generations would have gone for. But one of the big items out of it was essentially the big hindrance is student loan debt. And so when people are trying to get mortgages, that's what they're seeing, is these students are coming out and that is their biggest hindrance in buying their first home. So kind of coincides with some of our goals with Springboro. So
Mr. Miller? Troni?
I didn't really have anything, but I think to your point, Mrs. Cole, it's one of the areas that we talked about with post-secondary education last year, and I think also dual credit that's being talked about, because if you really think if a parent can come to Springboro schools and their student can leave with a year of college, if that were a goal, to allow them to have a year of college credit, and I have a student that I sponsor who's a friend of our family at Ohio State University, and his first year of loans was $20,000. The cost was $28,000. His second year, he's now $37,000 in debt. He hasn't gotten to his junior year of college yet. He's a smart boy, but if there are ways that we can make it attractive for our parents and enhance, push forward student achievement further, where students can be in Springboro schools and have a year of college credit at a minimal to low cost and be done with college in 3 years, you think that'd be a $20,000, $30,000 price tag that we'd be able to offer our parents sometime in the future. So I wholeheartedly support that concept. We talked about that last year a lot, and I'm looking forward to have further discussions on that as we continue.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to mention on that same note, it just reminded me, we had an orientation at MOM where a lot of our juniors were going to MOM and just kind of meeting with their counselors there to take PSEO courses. And even though I couldn't talk my junior into it, we still walked the campus, talked to the counselors, and got her a comfort level for maybe doing it next year. So, and I have talked to some graduates who have had PSEO and had a whole year under their belt, saved themselves at least $20,000. It was huge. And I really, really wish I had pushed more to get my kids in it, but when they said, I just don't want to, I'll do the AP option, I'm thinking, okay, but Some institutions accept those credits. Most, I think, state funded. Private, you still have to worry about whether the PSEO is accepted at the institution, but from what I'm understanding now is that they're less likely to get AP credits. This is just what I'm learning across my 3 that are in college. Less likely for some of those to transfer than they are the PSEO credits. But if they're a private institution, you know, your luck is probably shot because, you know, my kids did well on the AP exams, but they were only able to opt out of maybe one course because it wasn't a match. So it's really tough to know. It's really a gamble, but being on the campus and learning how campus life is just, I think, sets them at ease.
If I may, one of the things we're looking at are online courses that Sinclair has approached us, and they can tell us up front which colleges will accept or not accept their credit. They're willing to do dual credit. We haven't nailed down the full price yet, but it's very cheap. But they can do it online. For example, a high school student that's in study hall, they can go and do an online class, and we would have computers here in the building. Most of the high school kids are even out doing PSEO, they don't like to leave. Or if they play sports, they need to be here 5 periods a day and be right back after school. So we're trying to look at options for them. For me, the savings is great, but once you're in college, when you have 16 to 18 hours of courses, man, there's just so much stress on the kids. So for them to be able to chisel away a few while they're in high school, maybe take 12 to 13 hours, it might lighten the load to where they can have a job when they're in college as well to keep down some of the costs. So I think it's a whole paradigm shift we need to look at, but we're just now finding out what some options that we haven't had in the past, and hopefully we take advantage of those. That's the direction we're looking.
Great. I'll support that.
Okay, any public announcements or future considerations? When is the Bengals going to be here?
August 19th from 5 to 7 p.m. and we will open the gates at 3:30 p.m.
Everybody hear about that? The Bengals are going to play here, and it's free.
It's free parking.
Admission is
$5.
free, but we're going to charge $5 for parking.
Correct.
We have concessions.
Both concession stands will be open now. You know, our football field doesn't hold 10,000 people, so there is the possibility that we could say, you know, we're a maximum limit. We're meeting right now with everyone. Bengals has their security, and we're meeting with our fire marshals and the police to make sure we have everything ready to go. But at the same time, there could be that point of, sorry, we have too many people here, so.
And the sports passes on us.
And the sports passes on. So yes, but we just met actually at 5:30 with Booster before this, both concession stands.
Great. So come hungry. Everybody come to the Bengals game on the 19th. Did you say?
19th, 5 to 7.
19th, 5 to 7.
Open the gates at
Be hungry.
3:30. So I would suggest getting here a little early because traffic will be leaving. Take your time. Take your time. Use the restroom before you get in your car.
Support your administrators that are parking you.
Any other future considerations? Okay, we will take a 10-minute break and then we'll reconvene for work session in the library.
We're meeting on the 16th with an update agenda on just kind of getting to know the panel, I think, a little bit. We're going to talk about this budget on all the needs that we have. And I think we're going to get back to the athletic director a little bit and just talk about kind of revisit and tool that and get ready to start for the October update and see what we're going to do in the October update. I think it's at 9 o'clock on the 16th at the central office.
Notice is going out to one.
Okay, and our next school board meeting, Dave didn't have it on his calendar, it's the 29th, correct?
That needs to be sent out.
Yeah, we haven't sent that out yet, guys, but we're going to change it from the 22nd to the 29th instead. And we haven't had that public announcement yet, but we'll do that soon. We only have to have a 24-hour notice, but I'm just letting everybody know now, plenty of time in advance. I think we weren't going to have a quorum, most people were out of town, so we went ahead and moved it back a week, forward a week, no, back a week. And then we're going to have a presentation, agenda item 11.2. Are we ready, or do we need to wait? Are you good? Thank you very much for doing that. I know it was last minute, yeah.
To clarify, we do not have a school board meeting next week. The next one is the
We do
29th.
not. The next one is the 29th.
Okay.
No meeting on the 13th.
I'm sorry?
No meeting on the 13th. That's the one.
Right.
No meeting on the 13th. We've been asked to try to take a few, we had went ahead and scheduled a third meeting each month just in case we needed it, in case we were still in negotiations, so everybody kind of reserved that date. So we're going to now scratch that third meeting a month. And so the dates have kind of changed a little bit. And then the 22nd was just because we knew we wouldn't have quorum, we moved it
We may
forward.
have an issue with that though, because we have to get employees. Some of the employees we're hiring right now.
Oh, I see. We may have to call an emergency though, just for personnel, perhaps. That could be done. For sure. For sure. That's fine. I'm not arguing. We can do that. We can do that. And when are you talking? Maybe the 13th, we have them? Because again, we don't have quorum. The problem is the 22nd, we don't have enough people. So you'll have to let us know ASAP so we can make sure we have at least 3. So 3 of us, we're going to be out of town on the 22nd, so just come up with something.
What about the 24th?
It can't be the 22nd.
Oh, I
That's-
was
yeah.
thinking Tuesday, so.
Anyway, I mean, we don't have to decide now, Lee.
I'll do the best I can.
Yeah. you just
One of
want-
our issues is we have some aides that we have to hire, and those are new positions. We are, because of the extended needs of students and IUPs.
Right.
She was going to plan on doing that during work session in the next meeting, not realizing it was canceled. So I don't know how we have to work around that, but they will be new, because we will be adding at least 8 aides. 8.
Okay.
Because of extensive student needs for IEP students.
But like I said, we only have to have 3
Okay.
to vote on that, so.
I think you said bring it to work session then to the board.
That's
so-
usually what we have been doing.
Versus just ignore the work session and go to direct action.
We haven't done that with personnel.
New position, I think
With,
that-
with.
Oh, I see,
with-
additional
when we're-
positions.
Yeah, because we have to create it,
Oh, I see.
and then we have to fill it. Post it, fill it.
It's not something you could be ready with tonight? Discussing?
I need 8 aides for the district, new positions.
That was easy.
All in favor?
We can't vote. We have to go into business, but
Are there any problems with that?
Are there any problems with that?
well, we can get to that.
Well, I would
I
ask.
don't know why not.
So, only because he brought it up. Extensive, these are new positions, which means new cost, federally funded positions, general revenue,
General revenue,
full-time, part-time, what's the?
full-time.
Why don't we can talk about that. I'm looking for, how can we do that? Because we've got it obviously out on the agenda now. We do, yeah, I'm trying to think of how we can do that. Mrs. Jarvis, I'm asking for your input.
Discussion of other business items as required.
So at 11.7,
Yes,
let's bring it back up. That would fit into that category.
that's perfect.
See, that was easy. Thank you. Okay, we have a presentation, agenda item 11.2, Freedom Shrine presentation, Date and Exchange Club. And we have as a guest tonight to present this idea to us, Mr. Eric Price from the Date and Exchange Group.
Good to meet everyone. I'm the president of the Exchange Club for Dayton, and I went on vacation. And in my absence, other members met with Dr. Coles. So now I'm doing the presentation. Freedom Shrines is something, I hope everyone has had the opportunity to see some of them. But it's been a flagship program of the National Exchange Club for years. And what I'll do is survey more of history, because the history is really quite rich. But to anchor it to concerns for today, Constitution Day a couple years ago, 2011, we had a report called Guardian of Democracy. The foreword was written by retired Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor with retired Congressman Lee Hamilton. And just to pick one of the quotes out from that report, from Barack Obama, President, loss of quality civic education from so many of our classrooms has left too many young Americans without the basic knowledge of who our forefathers are or the significance of founding documents. If you go out to the back and look at the reports, they suggest that the National Archives and the Library of Congress should make sure that everyone has the opportunity to see both replicas and digital copies of their most important materials. Well, that's what the exchange clubs have been doing for the last 6 decades. And that effort really has its roots with the Freedom Train. At the end of World War II, there were something called victory trains, which toured the nation and encouraged people to buy victory bonds, because at that point in our time, we financed a lot of debt with domestic savings. Attorney General Tom Clark had the idea that we should do the same sort of thing, only with some of the most precious documents that tell the story of freedom of the United States. So the basic problem they had over 60 years ago was which founding documents would the Archivist of the United States choose or the Librarian of Congress choose? And how would they deliver it? Well, turns out you put them in plastic boxes and you put them on a train. But these are some of our most precious documents. So you don't just put them on a train, you're going to have a Marine Guard with the Attorney General of the United States, the Archivist of the United States, and the Librarian of Congress, all making sure their precious cargo is going to be safe on a trip to 300 cities across all 48 states at the time. Right? They started out in Philadelphia. At the end of going through the train, you would sign something called the Freedom Pledge. And one of the cities in the South actually has a plaque for where that rededication took place. And just to read the last few lines of the Freedom Pledge. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and for all mankind. That's a very interesting plaque because the pictures I just showed you were from Philadelphia, and you will see an integrated scene there. This plaque is in Greensboro, North Carolina. And if you're looking at this plaque, over your left shoulder is a Woolworths. In fact, if you march from North Carolina A&T west to downtown and south on Elm to the Woolworths, that plaque is over your right shoulder by the time you get to the Woolworths block. Well, what the Exchange Club did is each one of those check marks is a Freedom Train document that we have a high quality photograph of. So those can be printed and laminated. They're very clear black and white. And they can be put up for display. This is the Freedom Shrine that sits in Sinclair. You can see that they've made it sort of an architectural feature of the building. This off to your right, if you're looking at this, is the cafeteria. So this is pretty much facing 3rd Street. And to see the detail of one of the documents, since that whole display is incredibly shiny as a part of an architectural feature, Alan Scher said, you know, when you walk up to this, I want you to be able to see yourself as an American, as someone whose heritage is that shrine of the documents and the freedoms that those documents represent. So this is the detail of one of the documents. It's the Emancipation Proclamation. We had a very good story of one of the kids at DECA. We asked the kids there, they have a Freedom Shrine, and said, you know, well, does it really serve a purpose? And she actually said, yeah, we spent a lot of time at this school because we have late night study sessions, and at one point she actually was able to walk over to the Freedom Shrine, take a look at the Emancipation Proclamation, and she was really moved by what it had to say. But this is the black and white photograph of the real deal from the archives of the United States. You know, that ribbon should actually be a little ribbon, a little piece of red tape at the time. And at the bottom of that, you'll see that it has the title and a very brief explanation, and then made available by the Exchange Club. This is the Freedom Shrine installation at Oakwood High School. I don't know what wing it connects grade-wise, but if you're of a certain grade, I think you have to pass by it multiple times a day. There's sort of the other side. We've not been able to find the Freedom Shrine that we installed at Wright State. We found just in time a Freedom Shrine at another high school that was slated for demolition, so we were able to capture those. It's replaced by a beautiful new high school with no documents from the Freedom Shrine. I also picked another recent photo. This shows a different installation where all the pieces are separate. This is a more modern installation. We've changed the backgrounds of some of the frames, essentially, on some of the documents. So a more modern installation would look like what you see in that picture. So that is it. If there are any questions, I'd be, I have handouts that give the list of all 30 documents for the board members. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Is that list located online, that list of the founding documents?
Yeah.
Okay.
And do we have a copy?
Well, we have a few up here. Do you have some more somewhere?
I can consent, so.
Okay. Yeah, we can share ours. I had a question. Did you say, I thought they told me that there's one at Centerville? The Freedom Shrine at Centerville? There's one at Oakwood.
Yeah, you saw the one at Oakwood.
At Sinclair? Is it?
Yeah, you saw both of those.
So we can look at, I mean, if people want to go look at what's at those two schools. But was there one at Centerville?
We're double checking Centerville.
Okay.
So the reason for the presentation is to consider this in Springboro schools, in the high school or in elementary school or all schools, or, I mean.
We would be happy to make documents available.
That's what they were telling me, is that this is something that they sponsor and they support. If Springboro wanted to put something like this in a junior high or high school, that it costs about $1,000 to generate and I thought it was, what do you call it? Mount the documents, and that they would cover that cost for us as a donation if we wanted to put together a Freedom Shrine. That, or what I think the other suggestion was that you can ask for community sponsorship, or some business can sponsor that Freedom Shrine wall if they wanted to, but otherwise the Dayton Exchange Club would do that for us. So we could invite businesses to participate. There could be a ribbon cutting kind of ceremony, or Freedom Shrine, if businesses wanted to participate in that. And so its design can be up to the Business Advisory Council, perhaps. I don't know. It's just an idea that some other schools are thinking about at the same time we are. And I just don't see the downside, but I think it's something that I said, sure, come tell us about what you guys are doing.
It's in other schools.
It's in other schools. Yeah, Oakwood, for example.
I just want to make sure I heard that.
Yeah.
I heard of it.
And
Do they tie that into the curriculum with the high school? I mean, is that what they use it?
We would love to see that. We would really like to see that happen. I didn't want to come in and say, oh, by the way, there's 30 documents, and maybe not all of them are taught at some point in the course of study. That particular aspect is something that the Dayton Exchange Club will work with the General Assembly of the State Board of Education. But yes, obviously, given the support for improving civics education and the importance of those documents, it would be good for kids to be familiar with.
I had a question. I went to the National Exchange Club website and I looked at the Freedom Shrine documents, and I really liked how all the documents were laid out. It kind of covers everything. And I think it would be beneficial to have here in Springboro. But on another page, I found that you also have a program for a more perfect union, and the materials are supplied by the National Center of Constitutional Studies that we, as a community, didn't want on our school property. So is that going to any way be involved?
No.
Because the documents themselves, the original documents, are fantastic.
Okay, I really appreciate that. And that's one of the reasons why I went back to 1947. Okay, the Freedom Shrine effort really is in sync with what Attorney General Tom Clark thought best for the nation. So this is Harry Truman's Attorney General, who went on to be Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Tom Clark. He also went on to write, he was the author of the Shemp decision, which is one of the separation of church and state decisions. So it was important, I felt, really to at least mention Tom Clark. This is a 60-year-old effort. At some point, the more perfect union stuff showed up, and I can't say when or how. You know, in defense of the National Center for Constitutional Studies, you can get a book, it will have a nice blurb by President Reagan on the back of it, and, you know, it's like it might look okay. And then when you go through it, you know, you may or may not see problems. That's certainly not a centerpiece of what Exchange Club does. And one of the things I'm eager to see is sort of what would Freedom Shrine 2.0 be, because we need to be thinking about a technical refresh, and we need to be thinking about, oh, you know, how would kids decide? You saw a menu with check marks that would represent about 20% of the documents on the Freedom Train. You know, well, are those the right documents? And are the documents on the Freedom Train the right documents? And actually, if you, for a modern Freedom Shrine, you would have JFK and Martin Luther King, both represented. Well, you saw a modern list. Yeah. So
I like that it had all the founding documents, but it also had like original copies of the Gettysburg Address,
yes.
Washington's farewell, Martin Luther King's speech, "I Have a Dream," and it was the basic original or copy of the original, which was good for the kids to see. But the only concern I had was, are the other materials going to somehow find their way into the curriculum?
No, and I would be perfectly happy to have feedback on the National Center for Constitutional Studies that I could take the National Exchange Club that would cause them to rethink that program. And really, the direction I would propose, there's a book called Teaching America. It has some very strong contributions in it. It's an edited volume, about 20 chapters. And you know, I would think we should really, as a club, so as president of Dayton, I would take it to district and regional and national and say, you know, why are we messing around with more perfect unions when we really should get on the bandwagon for the Teaching American program and be doing the sorts of things that Justice Sandra Day O'Connor and Justice Souter are concerned about. And you know, everyone in Exchange who knows me knows I've been working on that for over a year. Did I take my questions?
Yeah, any other questions, guys?
Does it come as a full set that you have to have all 30, or if you like 25 of them, can you choose those, or is it, how do you normally install it?
There's actually a 20-piece and a 30-piece. And it's a full set. There are considerations because Freedom Shrine is actually a registered trademark. I don't know all the details. Let me cover two goodies that I'll get back to that, but one thing I did miss, not only do we have the Gettysburg Address, right? The menu you saw, the check marks, are things that were on the Freedom Shrine that we have photos of, that we have, you know, nice replicas, laminated, sturdy, they'll hold up for 40 years, okay? We have the Gettysburg Address, the photo of that, of the version that Lincoln held in his hand in Gettysburg. Okay, it's not one of the other 4 copies. Now, your question was, should, you know, do you do the complete 30 or the complete 20? It is a registered trademark, and I don't know what other folks would say, but the last picture that you saw, well, the city offices or council offices in San Juan Capistrano, that was not a pure, perfect Freedom Shrine. That was something that they moved. They had the original installation, they moved some pieces, they added some pieces of local importance, and they put it in their chamber, okay? And I think the argument that I would make is that if the more you guys pay, the more, leverage you would have with the documents, I suppose. But from the Exchange Club perspective, it comes as a package of 20 or a package of 30.
How do we teach this program now, or do we?
What, the Constitution information?
Yes, ma'am.
Our curriculum director's not here.
Do we have anybody here who teaches it?
Well, I mean, right now, we teach the state's curriculum. So whatever's in the state's curriculum is what's addressed.
Which would be?
I mean, we have 13 grades that we're responsible for, so to tell you exactly, specifically, I can't.
What do we do at the high school?
We teach the Constitution. We make the kids read it, they understand it, they should memorize the basic ideas of it. They should be able to tell us pretty much generally what the contents of it is and about.
How long do you devote to that out of the
Let's
school
see.
year, just out of idle curiosity?
Well, we were just working on our new map because we have standards, and we spend we're gonna spend about 7 weeks on the basic principles of our government, which goes into the history of the convention, the Constitution.
How much do we specifically spend on like these documents, I guess?
All these documents, our content, we do the Declaration. This is for government. We do the Declaration, we do the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Any amendment, we do those. And
Would these be a substantial benefit to have these for the kids to sit there and actually look at?
well, I don't necessarily think, I mean, I can get these. I mean, I can get these from anywhere and have the kids look at them. I mean, I think what you're talking about is having a display. I think a display would be nice.
Right, it's more of a
Yeah.
reinforcing mechanism to understand.
Well, the problem is when you give these kids these documents, first of all, they're very difficult to read because, the kids can't read cursive and they certainly can't read historical cursive.
That doesn't really sound too good.
No. Well, I mean,
But it doesn't do cursive.
And I mean, if you look at their handwriting also, it's just hard for them to read. So while we might, I mean, we may look at the original Constitution, but I would never have them sit down and try and read it they read the words in the book.
They really don't know how to read cursive anymore?
I don't know, well, I mean, I don't write cursive on the board, first of all, but I would guess that some of them can't. I've had kids, I've proctored ACT tests where the kids are supposed to sign their name. They're not real sure how to do it.
I'd say that's a problem. Okay.
The Constitution is also taught in 8th grade American history. 8th grade American history starts with the Native Americans, explorers, and then goes all the way to Civil War. So they spend lengthy time on Declaration of Independence, Constitutional Convention, Constitution, Bill of Rights.
Okay, which means that there's another, 27 documents that we can have access to. And at least it kind of highlights the founding fathers and, the things that they were writing to form the foundation of the country. I just don't see the downside to making that more of a centerpiece
I mean, if you're
in
talking about
one of the buildings.
a display, I think would be very nice.
Right.
And as
Some
part
of
of a
those
project, we could have kids look at other historical documents and say, what other documents do you think maybe should be added up here? Or look at more contemporary writings and say, what should we add to a more contemporary shrine, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do with it, but using that in the classroom, I probably wouldn't use that in the classroom. I mean, we might go and look at it.
Sure. And that's not what they're proposing.
Right.
They're proposing something out in
Oh, I
public
think that would
space.
be very nice to have in the hallway.
I think just to see the depth
Mhm.
that covers all that time
Sure.
and history,
Right.
that's a permanent display, really
Yeah.
makes an impact.
And so I'm thinking that as people want to leave this meeting and maybe go talk to businesses about sponsoring that wall, And let me ask you, has anybody ever had a place where they could put a plaque by each document, sponsored by, this business, sponsored by that business? Anything like that? I might be thinking generating revenue, but that's okay. I'm just thinking that if a business wants to, donate to the, and maybe there's a separate wall, because this looks more expensive than just providing the documents for whatever price tag that is. If there was something like this that's more of a whole wall and really special, that's more money. And that's not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about just the documents themselves being $1,000. If we did something more spectacular, though, that would get an increasing price tag that I'm not sure we're ready to talk about. But if we got a lot of businesses who say, you know what, I'd really like to sponsor this Freedom Shrine.
Yeah, if we had an art club.
Or stick my foot in my mouth.
I mean, no, they could do a mural. They could do a mural. They could come up with something.
You've got some pretty talented kids out here.
So, any board member, would you like to give input on where that should be, or where do you want to go from here?
I think we should, if it looks something nice to me, but it'd be great. I don't know how to do that, but why don't we set a design or set a direction for putting together?
Well, I mean, as far as the art
Are there
club.
any words or information that are on the copyrighted Freedom Shrine wall, or is it simply Freedom Shrine and the documents?
That is a very high-end installation that would be perfectly acceptable to the exchange.
I mean, as part of, you said yours is a copyrighted 20 or 30. Is there anything else that verbiage beside the documents that is part of that copyrighted that would also be on the wall, that we need to be aware of?
No,
No.
they added Freedom Shrine in St. Clair.
Okay.
But that is a spectacular display, but it is generic, anything else, just, you take our stuff out of the box, they added the background
Okay.
word Freedom Shrine.
Okay. I just wanted to know if there was anything else copyrighted that was required.
Other names, so. They contributed.
So Tracy just asked what goes on the dedication plaque, and his response was whoever donated to the project. So that's where I'm saying we could recognize businesses that way, or have each document have a plaque with a business name on it. I mean, there's just an endless variety of things we could do, and I really like having the title Freedom Shrine on it, because then it's visible from afar what it really is, what that whole wall is, not just a bunch of old pieces of paper. So, do we want to get a group, a committee, let somebody have that and go to town, have fun? Anybody? I see no hands.
Can I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
As a student, knowing that we don't have that much time in between classes, I mean, I don't think that many people would stop and appreciate that, and they wouldn't actually take the time to read all of the documents. So if there could be a plaque that summarized it, or summarized different things, and the most important document, I'm not saying certain ones are more important, but saying the big ones like JFK's inaugural or Martin Luther King or Emancipation Proclamation, I'd say that a lot more kids would stop and read a summary rather than try to decipher Abraham Lincoln's handwriting, because that's very difficult. So, yeah. Yeah.
Sounds like we have our first volunteer.
I would be more than happy to do that.
To at least, I mean, you got to find a space. You
I
have
would be happy to
coordinate.
help with all of that.
Oh, that'd be great.
But addressing her point, I would think that it is important to have the full document.
Yeah,
And that is, I mean.
have the full document and then a summary beside
That,
it.
yeah, that may be appropriate, but I mean, I think the real, the ambiance of this really is looking at this whole thing and going, man, look at the way they wrote, this is how they wrote, this is how they signed it, look, there's John Hancock's signature, big as life, just like it's supposed to be, and on the other side of that, we do have to remember this isn't a high school. And the first thing that comes out of my mind is vandalism. And so it's going to have to be protected. Okay. Well, I mean, again, you're putting our documents up there for
Well, it's not a
public
big problem with the high school.
concern. I would just take to that. I don't know if they've ever been vandalized anywhere else. I would think not at St. Clair. But maybe at the high school, if some kid wanted to make a point, boy, there you go.
Well, and that, the committee needs to determine where is the best location to get one, visibility, and two, security.
Yes.
So I think
I'll
that's
be
a
happy
good
to
point.
participate in whatever needs to be done to help drive this
Beautiful.
anyway, so.
And I think that,
We'll put it outside my classroom. I'm serious, I got a big wall outside my classroom.
There you go. Guild offer. So,
What happened to number 3 and 4 on here? This drives me crazy.
I don't have that sheet.
It goes from 1, it goes from 2 to 5.
It is possible that 3 and 4 are on the 20 piece and not on the 30 piece. Would be my first guess. Okay. And
I would expect.
you know, it swaps out depending on which Declaration of Independence. The one we have the picture of is a Thomas Jefferson draft, so that would be good for English class as well as history.
Okay.
One quick question, how were these selected?
They were, as we went through, they were called initially from the Freedom Train. To be on the Freedom Train, you had to get past the Archivist of the United States, the Library of Congress, and then a further review panel.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a piece of this selection that goes back to the, 47 and before. And that's one of the reasons why I did feature that. It's like, this is sort of as good as it gets in terms of having the most prominent people pick what needs to be seen. Like,
I think it's interesting because I am a librarian, but I also have a history major, and there are a couple of these I've never even heard of before.
There was a certain enthusiasm for celebrating the end of World War II in 1940.
Yeah, well, like for the Washington's letter to Colonel Nicola, so, I mean, that's just one that stood out. I was just curious. So, I mean, I'm not trying to make it editorial or anything, but I was just curious.
I'm just glad to know you have history.
Just kidding.
so what I'm hearing is we have Mr. Petroni, Mrs. Dauber, Doug Wiedemann, and what's your name? Tyler Osborne. So we have a group of 4. He's looking, yeah, I heard you. Volunteer. So I think we've got a group of 4, and you can always recruit some others, but maybe we can get you in touch with Mr. Price and the rest of the members of the Exchange Club and go from there, and whatever your ideas are, they're all going to be fabulous, I'm sure. Is that where we should leave off? Mr. Price? Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next agenda item, 11.4.
11.3.
Sorry.
Wishful thinking.
Right. We love you. We love you, Mr. Petroni. 11.3, Springboro Standards, Mr. Petroni.
This is for conversation. I think I've been pretty vocal about trying to find ways to enhance, come up with, well, I think our parents demand that we have high standards in Springboro. And Mr. Petrie, back in, July 31st, I believe, last year, before his inaugural day of August 1st, gave a presentation to our board that showed a lot of data and a lot of statistics and a lot of information about the definitions of proficient and accelerated and advanced. And I believe I've been rather vocal thinking that the state standards, as they've established those scores and those titles, are on a cut score. Now, our district, our teachers do a phenomenal job. We're excellent with distinction. So let's separate the conversation about anything that leads to looking differently about how we're teaching or what we're doing in Springboro. What I'd like to try and figure this out, to have a reasonable conversation, a rational conversation about actually finding a way to establish when we take the tests, to set a Springboro standard and an achievement metrics on that. And the simple way for me to think through that is that we grade our students on A through F, so can't we just apply on raw scores A through F and as a baseline see where that is, and then try to figure out, do we want to have 95% proficient as a C or above, if that's what proficient is defined as, or do we want to have 95% advanced or accelerated or above as some sort of level. And I don't know the best way to go about it, but I really think we have an opportunity to establish our own standard. I use those tests, which I've been told are hard. I've not taken one, so I'm not saying they're not hard, and there's not a good reason to have the varied cut scores, although my history lesson of education in Ohio has been that the first day those test scores came out, which were developed by teachers, and the first day they were implemented in the state, most every urban district failed because they didn't establish any lower cut scores. So as the time has gone by, and every year the state changes and lowers or raises certain grade level scores, and they establish these scores where 10th grade is you're proficient if you score 42. 8th grade is 53. I'm making these up. I don't remember the numbers, Mr. Petrie, but they went from 37% to 42%. Were proficient. So I'm just wondering if it's a dialogue we can have. It's a way we can maybe put a committee together, the community, teachers, something that actually says, hey, we know we get these grades and we're ranked and we're going to be excellent with distinction. That's awesome. Now take the raw data and apply that to some other standard and say, okay, but internally, we're striving to really move that bar higher outside of these state definitions. It's like transparency of the grade rate. I don't know the right way to approach it. I'm not trying to bring up a controversy. This is not meant to be any type of negative conversation. This is more a way, how do we elevate and do something along these lines? So I'd like to see us come up with a way to do that so that we really start, our students take an OAA test, and if they take a math test and they get a 90, they think it's an A. If they take an OAA test, you get a 47, they think they're good. And I think parents think if you're proficient, we're doing okay, but really proficient means they've scored between a failing grade and maybe a D in the real realm of our grading standards. So I'd like to figure out how we do something different. I don't know how to do it, so I'm just bringing it up for dialogue. There's any ideas, any thoughts on it?
We discussed, as principals the other day in our opening retreat, we discussed it a little bit. When you look at our data, based off the criteria that's there now, we hardly have any grade level below 90% pass rate. It's incredible where we're at. So when you look at that data of how are we going to drill down and look at each of the kids individually, it's pretty tough off today's standard, but the new standards coming out are going to be more individual grades. So that then is going to translate into a letter grade, which what we've been told currently is accelerated or advanced would be passing. Anything below that would be failing. Will the state stick to that? Who knows? Maybe the first time it comes out, they're like, oh my gosh, 50% of Ohio didn't pass, they'll change that too. So those are some things we need to look at, but it would be nice if we were able to look at what would be that cut score across all grade levels that's accelerated advanced, just to see where our kids rank and add up. So it's just defining that.
Well, I guess in Florida, which about the time we were hiring you, they actually are ahead of this new grading scale A through F, and they put their new tests in because they were a race to the top state.
Right.
And literally, I think I might have sent you the article, shared the article. The first day the test results came out, everybody failed. Parents were saying, you're hurting my children. You can't let my child have an F. You have to do something about that. And so 2 days later, the Department of Education met and they changed the cut scores and everybody started passing.
Right.
And that's what happened in Ohio 10, 12 years ago. So I don't know if I care about the state. I guess my point is, I don't know if I care about what the state says we're supposed to be. I know that we're always going to achieve. I know our teachers are going to hit those standards and exceed those standards. But I'm trying to think of, what do we want? What is this Board of Education, or what will this district support, or what will the teachers support as a level? I don't care the proficiency between an F and lower than an F and a D. That's passing under the standards, but I don't think that's acceptable to me. I'd like to figure out how we advance student achievement, I guess. And I don't know where to take it from there. I'd love to see a lot of discussion on this to figure out a way to come up with something.
And we'd be happy to look into that. Right now, the pressing needs for us is OTES, the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, the SLO, Student Learning Objectives, and then OPES, which is the Ohio Principal Evaluation System. We are behind on that, no doubt about it. And all of our data, if we don't have that in place, is going to be slowed down 2 years from now. So that is something right now, we pretty much are, once we get the hiring done and get caught up from the summertime negotiations to where we were able to do some of this work, that's that will definitely be our focus. So hopefully, once we get through that, we'll be able to look at some of these things. But it's the next step we need to go, looking individually at our students, because the whole way that the district's rated is going to change within a year if they stick with that plan.
Right, and again, I'm going to reiterate, I don't care what plan they stick with. This is
Right.
Springboro. That's my opinion. I don't really care.
Common Core, to my understanding, is being introduced, that it may get shot down, to my understanding. So everything that the state's spent hundreds of millions of dollars on could crumble all in one swipe.
Didn't I just read that the 10th grade test is now going to be the PSAT? Did I just read that they're moving the 10th grade test to the PSAT as the standard?
I sent that out. I didn't fully read it, but I sent that.
I think that's what that said. So PSAT is going to be a 10th grade standard. I mean, I don't know what you all think about this, or if there's even any comments to have. Or, I mean, I think we have the raw data for all of our students. For the last 2 years, it'd be really neat if we just applied an A through F scale, no names, and figure out where we're at. Maybe it's 5 weeks from now, you deliver it after you get yourself caught up, maybe it can be done. But I just be really, I think it'd be a good, I don't know, I'd like to see it. And then maybe there's something that we can glean from that tells us our percentile of kids and grades, and maybe you know, we set a standards on a different level.
Mrs. Strickberger is bringing back the curriculum council this year. And that could definitely be a discussion they would have there as well. So I mean, that would need to be vetted and looked at in a lot of different ways before we could set a standard.
Right, no, I'm not even asking to say wake up in the morning and go with 90 to 100 a day, and that's our standard, but it does seem to make sense if the state got rid of cut scores, it'd be interesting. I just don't feel like we should be grading Springboro on the curve.
Because the Ohio School Board does admit in all of their presentations across the state that the bar is really low. When you accept 32% of the question, a student has to answer 32% of the questions correctly. I'm forgetting if it's 5th grade math. To be proficient, you know, they admit that that's really down there. So, and what Dave is saying is, even though some of the A through F grading system for the state, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is this new A through F is going to kind of raise that bar up a little bit. Maybe Springboro's in a different echelon altogether, and we make our own bar, and it's dependent upon more of the bell curve that we have here. So over the next year, I'm hearing you say right now we're kind of busy. I got it. But maybe over the next year, you know, that conversation takes place is we won't use the state's bar. We'll make you know, a Springboro bar, and we try to push people to that bar rather than accepting the I think Colleen Grady called it a cruel hoax, meaning that being called proficient when you more than failed the exam is a cruel hoax in her writing. And I think that's kind of true. And maybe Springboro says we're not going to participate in that. Our bar is going to be at a place where all students have to pass. Passes in, and we define that.
We
Is
have
that a
done
C?
that in some respects with Boston, Pinnell, and Ainsworth. We're able to look at trends of how our youngest kids have done on more frequent formative assessments. The thing with state tests, it's one test, one day. There's so many variables that a child, especially for the older kids, what happened on the way to school? What happened the night before? You break up with the girlfriend? Did the car break down the way to school? Hit someone in the rear end? Where with our younger kids, we are looking at those literacy levels and the way that we're assessing them. That was one of the things with the assessors, that's what they do. So we do have a lot of trend data there already that we can look at. Pinnell criteria might be a level C at the end of first grade, but the majority of our kids are at level D or level E. So there are some areas that we're already doing that, and perhaps our reading intervention, we provide that at level C, where some districts would be level A. So we're doing that a lot already. It's just with the state test, it's a little different because that ends up us trying to put all that in ourselves when there's a lot of information that's gleaned in there. But we do have a couple of parents that are interested in getting all of that information in their ranking, so we'll have some of that. We have some parents working with us on that.
Can I just make a comment real quick? Just to remind everybody, the OGT is given in March, and I still have a whole quarter of material to cover when that test is given, and that's a whole 10th grade test. So I still have 10 weeks of material that I haven't covered when those kids are tested. And I'm not saying that's going to make the test scores go up, but we really have to try and figure out things that we need to hit on before they take the test. Because we don't get to the civil rights, but I know civil rights is going to be on the test. So I have to take time out of going through the material to get them prepared for material that's going to be on the test that we're not going to get to until after the test.
Don't they study some of that in the 8th grade though?
Yeah, but this is a 9th and 10th grade test. We
Well,
don't,
it's cumulative on the knowledge base though.
it's
isn't it?
cumulative 9th and 10th grade.
Right.
You cover things, you may repeat on some things, but you're going to hit it at a different level, and maybe even different content, because what an 8th grader can do, you know, you're going to expect more as of a 10th grader. But I'm just saying that we have to do some guesswork when my kid's going to get tested on the civil rights or whatever else is coming up. I mean, one year we didn't make it to the Cold War.
How are we doing on the OGT and social studies?
We have, I would guess, I'm trying to remember, probably 80 to 85% of our kids score at the 2 highest levels. So we have and our pass rate is probably at least
So
95.
you've got about 80% of your kids getting 65 or better.
They're scoring at the advanced level, and that's being tested over a year's worth of material. Well, actually, it's being tested over 2 years' worth of material that they haven't had complete coverage on.
We have all of that data. Actually, I think we give it to you. It's on the spreadsheet, so. Thanks.
So that's okay. I mean, I think we've got an idea of the proposal, and that's, you know, having Springboro have its own set of standards separate from the state, which we know are typically low.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. The comment Ms. Stauber, I hope my comment wasn't taken to say that we're not doing enough to get to the test.
No, I didn't take that, but I think a lot of people don't understand that. I still got a lot of material to cover when the kids are tested on it. And it's like, how can you give a 10th grade test in March? You know, so that's part of our frustration as a teacher of trying to guess. And there's 36 questions. It's 2 years worth of material and there's 36 questions.
Wow. Right.
So then I have to, all right, what are the 36 questions gonna be?
I didn't know if there was a 9th grade test coming down the pike too, and an 11th grade test coming down the pike too. I thought there's
So
some.
the end of quarter course exams are part of the
new movement that may.
as well. That is why Mr. Stripper is talking with you about when we look at our curriculums, we do have to watch adding or taking out, because at the end of the day, our kids are going to be assessed, and they're assessed over what the state chooses. So that's not what is at the forefront in those classrooms. They're not going to be prepared for those assessments, which then is going to impact our data. So there's a lot of discussions to have when you look at our curriculum and what's added in and what's not added. So that's something like for the Freedom Shrine, to add those pieces in and give more time on some of those. That's great, but you got to understand when more time is given in a certain area, it's not going to be given on perhaps what the state thinks is most important, which then is going to impact our test results. So it's one direction takes you another. So if we're trying to set a standard, the only way you can set a standard is to make sure you're addressing the control variable, which is the assessment. And if you're not doing that, or there's something else being taught that's different than that, that's going to impact that, which then is going to impact our standards. So it's just something we need to have more of a focus on that. It's not something that's going to be answered in 5 minutes.
No, I definitely wasn't looking for that, but I want to elevate the conversation a little bit and see if we can move things to some different place that has the considerations of when the testing is, what the testing is. And I'm not an expert in this area. I just think we can do something that for student achievement, I think would be a good idea.
A couple of comments on that. You know, I've been, this isn't the first time I do this, but, you know, if you're the state and you're designing curriculum or standard curriculum for all the students in the state, I mean, you know, I drew this little graph of, I don't know if you can see that one or not, but it's intelligence and the number of students, right? And you would expect like a bell curve for that. And so if you're the state and you're designing curriculum, you have to design that in a narrow band. And I don't think that it's boasting to say that in Springboro we have a lot of parents who are professionals. They have higher expectations for their kids, and I think that our kids perform better. So if you were to draw the same kind of graph for Springboro, I think what you'd see is that the peak in the bell curve is shifted to the side for Springboro. And so if we're teaching to the state standard or curriculum, that's probably good for the low end of our bell curve, but I think that we're missing what we ought to be delivering to the high end. And just conceptually, that's how I kind of think about this issue, is that I think maybe there is an opportunity here, and I understand that if we start deviating from what the state prescribes, that has impact on our proficiency test scores. But I guess the discussion is, by aiming for a great proficiency test score, are we underserving our kids? And I think that's kind of what you're talking about to a degree. You've been talking about, can we measure ourselves differently and raise the standard for measurement? But I think there's also a question about, are our kids capable of actually more knowledge than what the typical state curriculum does? And I know a lot of our main courses of study are just right up and down what the state standard curriculum is. So just another food,
Another
little
piece
bit
to
of
think
food for
about,
thought.
and it's something, we really have to look at this with OTES coming into place. The Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, 50% of that will be growth measured based off of how our kids score. So again, then now it comes back to the performance of the teacher based on the information that the state says he or she needs to teach. So again, it's a huge, we really have to give it a huge look when we get into this, otherwise one's impacting the other. See what I'm saying? So when we get into data, it's absolutely, you almost feel like as a teacher, you have to guess to some extent. It's a little bit better than it used to be, but there's a lot of content they have to teach in a short amount of time. And now it's going to be where they're evaluated on that. And their performance is 50% of that. We know that.
But like the Ames web, like I know when I got those along with my report card this year, 3 out of my 4 children got that. And so I could very quickly, each one of them are different learners and they learned at different speeds, and that was much more indicative to me of what I needed to work on with my kids.
Exactly.
Versus the report card and my OAA scores, and
Right.
that told me more.
Correct.
And
Now, at the
along-
secondary level, though, they don't have products like that. It
Yeah.
goes to the end of course exams, or some of the teachers do the formative assessments, but it's a lot different at a high school level when you have 180 kids that you're responsible for. At the second grade, they'll have 25 or 30. So it's still a lot at that grade level, but not like a secondary teacher. And they don't have the English language phonics that really rounds out about 6th grade.
I guess I didn't create the idea originally. There's a district I'm researching in Michigan that actually they've established some sort of standard that's outside of the state, and I don't know what they do with it or how I'm still working on learning that, but that's where the idea came from. So, and it's a public school district, so I don't know what they're doing different there. I think it's Oxford in Michigan, where I'm trying to really dig in with a board member, just kind of talk to. So whatever we give, it goes in curriculum council, would be great, because I know I was on curriculum council this year, and I don't think we had it.
I mean, there's performance-based assessments. There's a lot of different ways to establish to where it's more model-based, to where not only are they being assessed off of one test, they're being assessed off of projects for creativity. You develop the rubrics and everything. And there are a lot of really cool ways to look at these standards. But again, those are things that if you're going to do it properly and address all the pieces within that you're trying to assess, it takes some time.
With OTES and SLO, like what is the timeline and how far behind are we, and how?
We are a solid 2 months behind. Those student learning objectives, we need to be meeting with the team of teachers, the way that it's set up. And believe it or not, during negotiations, when we were within breaks, a lot of times we would meet with the team, because that's part of the team. So those have to be collaboratively agreed upon. And that's going to take some time. We had to do it because our contract was up this year. A lot of districts don't have to do that for 2 years. So there's a lot of talk out there that maybe those are going to stay the same. The thing with OTES is the principals will have to do 2 evaluations for every single teacher plus walkthroughs. It's a lot. So it's, what is it, an average of 9 hours per evaluation, and they'll have to do 2 for every single staff member. So at the high school, only have 128 teachers. It's the time essence. And then to get the student growth measures, you have to have the SLOs in place so that you can pump out the data on that 50% of the assessment or the evaluation process. So it is a lot that we have to have in place.
Okay, can we move on to 11.4? 2014 Pride Student Drug Use Survey and Questionnaire.
Yes, I sent you guys some emails on this, and we've actually posted the survey and both of the informational pieces online. I think the district did this 2 years ago, I'm not for sure. But anyhow, we had a superintendent's meeting yesterday with the county prosecutor, the sheriffs, a lot of the people at the state level. One of the things that they're looking at is trying to determine in grades 7 through 12, issues such as bullying, issues such as drug abuse, trends out there that they're seeing. A lot of this information is designed specifically for that system, but in terms of our school district, how will we be able to use this, being able to help determine most pressing needs and issues in school communities? Our counselors do different groups. They work with different groups of students, even in the elementary buildings. So the more data we're able to pump out in terms of the issues that the kids are seeing in school, and or if we have a drug abuse problem. A lot of districts don't like to go down this road because they don't want that publicly known. For me, it's about the kids. If we have an issue, I want to be able to utilize our resources to make sure we're addressing the needs of the kids. This addresses bullying, addresses different behaviors, all of those things we hear about. And a lot of times people will say, oh, that's just part of being a kid, until something tragically happens. Then it's, why weren't things in place? Well, here, even with our safety committee, I think we are on the forefront of trying to look at not only being preventative, but putting good solid models into place. So I think what this will do is generate a lot of information about what's going on in the lives of our students to help us better set our resources. If by chance parents don't want their kids to take this, they don't have to. It's not required by any means. It's a one-time survey. It takes about 40 minutes, no cost to the district. We do need to be registered by August 26th, but even then, if a student decides they don't want to take it, he or she in class, they don't have to take it. Really, in a nutshell, there's a lot. I mean, I could go on. We could do a 2-hour presentation on this, but it is all on our website now. The survey and both articles on where this came from, and of course, how our county has invested in it as well. So it's there for parents to do, and I would love to have feedback on that.
There's notes on here that it says the schools are never named in public, so.
Correct. What will happen is we will get data just from our school, but then in Warren County, all the schools collectively that do this will be put into a data system together. So then our Warren County, our prosecutor, the police department, all of their resources, they're able to look at across Warren County, what are the issues that we need to address? And they'll establish their resources on that. So it's really, for me, and for the county, they're really trying to use data to better manage their resources, which is not only cost effective, but best for the kids that are going to be impacted by this.
And it's anonymous. Do these kids take it in a homeroom class? Because I'm sitting here looking at some of these questions.
And nothing is online. It's all hard copy to make sure that it stays as anonymous as possible. There's no IP address to connect to or anything like that.
How does it stay anonymous in the classroom?
So there's no names or anything on it. So I mean, other than.
But if I just took it and I turned it into you,
Right.
I mean, these are some pretty serious questions on there that if I may want to be honest, but I hand it into you, you know I'm the third one in the stack. Or you know I come.
I mean, even when we take assessment, I mean, there's no foolproof method. Earlier in the year when I did the survey, some people liked it, I did that. I want to hear from the kids. We are here for the kids. It's not about being here for the adults. I got numerous things back from kids about things they didn't like in school and issues they were having. So you get a lot of valuable information back from these.
So you could do it in a 500.
I'm just thinking if you did it in the auditorium, some bigger room and they turned it into a machine or something.
Get an envelope, put it in the front of the room. Each kid puts it in the envelope as they get finished. Teacher won't have any idea what order they went in.
That's good.
Good suggestion, yeah.
I'm glad you're here, Gail. Come up here and sit by me.
But I do think it's important that we do something like that, because almost every one of these questions would.
You're not working, huh?
If they answer the question, other than that they've not been involved in it, they're basically incriminating themselves to some kind of crime. So I do think that it's important that if they do this, that we assure that there's anonymity.
What was your?
Well, in my 7th grade year, we did that, and my teacher put it face down, and it was on the opposite side of his desk, and no one saw it. It was face down, completely anonymous.
But I mean, I get your point. If you know, she walked up, there were already two there, hey, she's the third one, let's go get it, we know who. I understand, but at the same time,
You know, a lot
there's
of,
nothing 100% foolproof.
a lot of these questions are not educational per se. I don't see anything about, are you getting a better education? They all seem to be psychological or socially driven. Does that mean if we have some results that are strong in an area of high drug use that we're gonna then look at that data and say we need 17 different ways to solve that drug use by increasing program expenses as one of the solutions to get rid of heroin use if we had that as an issue?
Well, I mean, we have to see what the data says. If we have a huge area, we're gonna have to address it clearly.
But is it a school district's responsibility to deal with these meth, tobacco, alcohol?
I believe it is, yes.
I don't want this in my son.
Absolutely. We're here to educate the whole child.
Well,
Not-
at some
not
point, you
just
would think
academically.
if there was a lot of heroin use, you would think the cops would come in at some point in time.
Right.
And,
Well,
you know, the Fed, the government would want to, you know,
Yeah.
well, Stan Wow might have something to say about that.
Mr. Petrie, I did go to their website and I looked through their slide presentation and they focused with their data on alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and, prescription drugs.
Yes, the designer drugs.
Right, and they showed how decrease was going down because substance like that were not accessible. But I noticed on the survey, it goes into different other things. Because I know being an ICU nurse, we see a lot of huffing, and that doesn't turn out well. We've lost several teenagers.
Absolutely.
So they're huffing because it's not picked up on drug testing.
Right.
We're using K2
Right.
and spikes. We even had kids come into our ICU that were soaking their marijuana joints in formaldehyde and smoking them. So there's and aerosols. You can pick up a can of hairspray, your mom
Bath
has
salts.
it. Bath salt. So it'd be nice to have the data show, yes, maybe that's going down, drugs as far as alcohol and marijuana.
Right.
But the huffing and the course CBD are increasing.
Right.
So this is an outdated survey and
Some of that's on this survey.
doesn't address that stuff, does
No,
it?
some of that is on this survey. The K2, the spikes, the inhalants are on here, but I guess the question is, do you get the raw data by question? Because I had the same observation that the graphs are all kind of in those four main categories. But if you're really wanting question by question to know, I mean, sometimes stereotypically in higher income areas, you're not messing around in pot anymore. You are interpreting heroin and more designer kinds of things. So do we get results by questions?
That's a good question. That's something I would have to check.
Because I think it's valuable if we do. And then there's a whole section 19 where you could get some input from, key
Right.
stakeholders to design some other questions too and make sure that we add to it to make it most relevant to Springboro.
Right.
But there are, another 10 questions that we can add to our own survey if we get the results by question as well.
Right. And that would be something if.
So it's your recommendation to go and do this? Is what you're-
Yeah, I mean, I'm bringing it to you. I want to make it, it's an operational type thing. Just looking at the policy that we do, it's not something you necessarily have to vote on. But at the same time, I like you to know what we're doing in the school. And I like the community, this gives a great forum to let the community know what we're doing as well. I just don't like to watch things and no one knows what's going on. There needs to be a rhyme or reason behind it.
How do you make it, what happens when students don't do it, or how do you make it before the minutes that's being taken in the
Well, I mean, it's important. I mean, when you look at, in terms of educating kids, we're just not here to educate academically. I mean, while they're here and under their parents' roofs, we have an obligation to make sure we're addressing the kids as much as we can. So, we have a lot of issues and we have personnel to address that, so.
And if it even, and sometimes, something like this, if it can point out a problem and save one kid, it's worth it.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's, a lot of kids are gonna lie, a lot of kids that are hooked are gonna lie. But I haven't seen the questionnaire, but if it covers some things like, have you heard of kids doing this? Have you heard of kids doing that?
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that's gonna.
Right, and again, I mean, a lot of times we'll have these discussions until something happens, then it's an all-out assault. Let's do this, 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 and this. This is more of a preventative. We're seeing what we have going on right now.
Do you have a comment?
A couple of questions is, what is the purpose of sharing this with the Attorney General and the law enforcement? What's the point of doing that? And to tell the kids who all's going to be accessing the data?
it's all here. It's all, we have it all online, how it is, and what they're gonna use it for, who's behind it, who's developing it. We have all that online. But that's the main thing, is so they can look at trends in terms of what they need to do to combat things. Heroin right now is on the rise, and to my understanding, it's in pill form. So there's a lot of things that they're looking at now. When they do these, it lets them know where to address things, instead of just doing it the way it's always been done. They need to catch up to speed on what, but it's all online.
So as to Mr. Petroni's point, why is the school board or the school district involved in assessing this data? Sounds like one of the principal purposes is really not education, but rather law enforcement and to inform law enforcement planning and programming.
But I think we're undervaluing how much we deal with the emotional needs of our kids when they're here in school. I mean, when our kids come in, if there's an issue or they're upset, we address those. And, you know, there's lots of things I can't speak about in public, but with teen suicide, we have people that divert a lot of situations. So to have the mindset, what I'm hearing is, we're just about education, and education is only the books. Oh no, there's much more than that, and this is going to give us more information about what's happening with our kids emotionally, mentally, drugs, all those types of things. We got to know those things.
So you could do social engineering.
Well, I don't know what you want to call it. I call it helping kids, making sure that we're protecting the kids from themselves and some of the things they're addressing. So for me, I'm not getting into the political ramifications of this or whatever people want to deem it as. I'm looking at what's best for our kids and making sure we take care of our kids when they're here.
You're not going to get data about individual children.
We're looking for trends.
For trends, and that will affect and change the approach that you take.
Correct.
But you're already concerned about kids. I believe that the teachers and professionals in the district are already sensitive to the kids, looking at their affect and whether or not there's a change in their performance in school. The indicators that there's a problem. I'm not sure that having data that's been integrated and normalized across a wide group is going to provide you any kind of information about how you should change your approach to dealing with problem kids individually.
Well, feel free, if you'd like to email and share that, that's more than fine. I mean, I'll be happy to collect all of those, but for this, we're looking at specific trends of what's happening with our kids, something we need to know.
We've given surveys like this.
We've given this survey here before. The
Yeah.
problem was it wasn't brought in front of the board, and the public really didn't know. I like to bring things in front of the public.
You're just trying to find out what's going on around here.
Correct.
Because
We
those
owe that
kids
to our
aren't
kids.
lining up to tell you, phrase set,
Right.
what's going on.
It does appear when we just got extra additional information, there's a task force that's going to use the data, and they're talking about assessing gaps in needs and services and different interventions, possibly to recommend as part of how to link that to schools. And so they have a mission through this task force to somehow trend this data into some sort of recommendations that may redirect perceptions or behaviors. So.
Well, for example, I know that the DARE program has always typically addressed marijuana use, but I read some reports that they were finding that kids weren't using, I mean, that the DARE program didn't really affect their use, where there were schools where they had the DARE program, schools they didn't, it was the same amount of use, so that they were kind of discontinuing that content area of DARE and maybe approach some contents that they thought they could make an influence on because they weren't really changing the percent of students participating in
Again, the only way
marijuana
we're going to
use.
find out how to change the content areas to be able to get our kids to find out what's going on. And that's the purpose of this.
I'd just ask Mr. Petrie that we make sure that the kids know that it's voluntary, that the kids know that there's a number of questions, depending on how they answer it, that they, you know, that they would be admitting to a crime. I mean, 90% of these questions for underage kids would be a crime. And I think that they ought to know that when they take this survey. And they, you know, and then if they want to, knowing that, if they want to opt out, at least they're fully aware. And if they want to opt in, that's fine too.
Full disclosure for the kids.
Yeah, I don't think we need to give the kids a Miranda rights warning.
I don't either. I think we just need to see where the trends are.
Because all of us remember all those kids we saw when we were growing up that took the wrong path and what happened to them. And you don't see that when you're 16 years old. Your idea of a long-term ramification is a month away. You sit there and rack it up over 20 or 30 years, you really see what the fallout is on those people. I don't know, I'm pretty sure everybody in this room doesn't really want to see their kids exposed to drugs. But they are right now. How deeply they are, we have no idea while we're sitting in this room. And our kids aren't coming up to us and telling us. Unless I'm wrong, somebody else has got a lot better
Especially if they're-
pipeline than I do. So you really don't have a whole lot of other options to find out what we can do to protect them from some of this stuff. If we got kids out there that are getting too damn deep in the weeds, we better do something about it now rather than wait 20 years.
I mean, a lot of places will turn a blind eye to it and have the attitude, we should be worried about this. I'm worried about it. I want to address it. So the day it comes back and it shows we have a problem, people are going to say, oh my gosh, what are you going to do about that problem? We'll have to address it.
Okay, I think we've given enough time to 11.5 or 11.4. We're not typically following the policy, and I hope nobody's going to call me on that, because there's a place on this agenda for community input, public participation, and, you know, I'm okay, and I'm the one that's supposed to guide the meeting. I'm okay with the public input throughout, but just know that it's not really following our policy. I'm okay with that, so I'm going along with it, but I suspect that then when we get to public participation there, that we've already done that. But anyway, 11.5, Clear Creek chiller replacement. John?
On the next board agenda, there will be a urgent necessity for the chiller replacement in Clear Creek. It died a couple weeks ago, right about the same time that the gentleman fell through the roof, actually.
That's a bad thing.
It was a rough week at Clear Creek that week, but there were two compressors in the chiller. One compressor had been down for a long time for some reason, which we're still trying to get through. The second chiller, or the second compressor, went to ground during one of the storms we were having. So it's completely down. We need to replace the chiller. It would have cost $60,000 to replace the two compressors in a 17-year-old chiller. Ceiling tile just went down because of a roof leak that I'll be dealing with.
I didn't fall down with it.
So, yeah, I was wondering if it was going to make it through the meeting, because it kept getting bigger and bigger as I was watching. But, so the chiller went down. We sent out requests to two companies, Johnson Controls and Peck Hanford Briggs, to give me quotes on the new chiller. I contacted our insurance company also to initiate a claim for insurance purposes, so we're working through that. They've called me, given me a list of things I need to get together with that, which is pretty similar to the one that when we had 5 Points go down a few years ago. So we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $120,000 to do the chiller. Peck Hanford Briggs was able to secure a carrier chiller in stock, believe it or not, so we don't have to go the temporary chiller route, which is a huge advantage, because it's just the additional piece of having a temporary chiller issue. So that should be here at the latest late next week, and it should be up and running before the students come on the 26th.
Great, so you don't know about insurance coverage?
Well, the insurance coverage, it's going to depend on the information that I get together with them. What makes it a little bit less black and white from the 5 Points chiller is the 5 Point chiller, it froze, it broke the tank, it was black and white what happened. This one,
you can tell what she's doing over
exactly.
here.
This one, unfortunately, one of the compressors had been down for a while. So once I get all the information, all the records of the chiller to the insurance company, they may have to break it into two claims, and they may not pay as much as the whole thing.
Yeah.
But the other plus that we've got, because this one's in Energy's area, they have grants because we're replacing the chiller. They have grants that can help us offset that cost because of the energy efficiency with the new chillers. So we're looking at trying to get some grants to offset whatever we don't get back from insurance.
Johnson Controls was supposed to be, is the company that monitors the,
Correct.
so there's a liability claim against Johnson Controls potentially?
Potentially. We have, that's what, we'll see what, because they may subrogate some of that through Johnson Controls. That's going to be up to the
Their
insurance.
insurance. So the 120,000, I'm curious, you don't have to worry about it tonight, but when we get to budget committee, I'm
yeah.
curious where this was on budget committee.
Correct. I'll have it, that's right.
Just curious.
I'll have some more specifics for you by then.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how this was vetted by that company to see where we're at.
Right.
But the 120,000, is there a size to this? Is there some number?
It's a 160-ton chiller. It's replacing a 150-ton chiller, which is good because I really want to add glycol to it anyway to prevent some of the freezing problems that we've had in the past in the district. So, you know, the glycol that's out now is a food-based glycol. It's a propylene.
Antifreeze, basically.
Yeah, it's an antifreeze basically rather than the ethylene that they used to use. So it's much, even though if you have a leak, it still creates a little bit of a mess. It's not as harmful to humans, and the cleanup's not the same as it used to be. So, and then it would save us a lot of heartache for those few times where it's really cold.
Would this be an expense out of that capital needs, or would this be expense out of that $1 million reserve? Out of curiosity, I'm just asking out loud.
So you guys been through the capital needs?
Yeah, I need to get through that.
I'd be willing to bet we can absorb the capital needs.
Yeah, I would-
Those budgets are pretty
And
strong.
like I said, I look for the majority of this cost to come back to us either through the grant or through insurance. Either way.
Do you
I
need-
know the 5.1, it was all covered by insurance.
Is there action you need before to get this done?
No, we've verbally given them the information, and that's why we'll need to do urgent necessity. Although I was expecting a board meeting next Tuesday, so.
That's why I was.
So you don't need a resolution or a vote on any action item?
Contract.
I mean, you're just.
Yeah, we will.
Oh,
We will, we'll need an urgent necessity to be able to do it because it's over the 25,000.
Are we not allowed to take any action in workshop? Is there sitting there? Is that a policy or is that just a rule? I mean, we have
Well,
5.
Yeah, it just, I didn't know we weren't having a meeting next Tuesday, because that was my plan, was to hit next Tuesday.
It's urgent necessity.
That's why I'm asking, I'm just
And
asking.
and it'll follow the same wording that we use for the 5 points chiller, because I already pulled that out.
He's not ready with anything now.
I just make sure there's no emergency. If
We
you
vote
know.
on it after fact because they're urgent compelling.
Oh,
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
All right, I was trying to be.
Okay, is that it? All right, we're going to move on to 11.6, public participation on work session agenda item. Any public participation? Are we good? Thanks. 11.7, discussion of other business as required.
You're on.
I need to hire some people.
Okay. I really like her because she makes it short and to the point. All right, so I guess the questions are, these are new positions that we've never heard of before. Why do we need them all of a sudden?
We have those positions, we have to add more of those types of positions.
I understand, we have aides, we've always had aides.
Right.
Right.
Because of the individualized needs written on the IEP for students, certain students that either need a one-on-one aid or they need to have access to an aid for particular instructional needs.
These were identified through, sorry, Jim.
Yes, through their IEPs.
But they're identified before they get into the academic year, is what you're saying. We've just all of a sudden found them?
These are new students.
And how do we know about these new students?
They've enrolled in our building and their IEPs have been reviewed.
Are these Title I funds then?
No,
What? Special.
it's special ed, it's not Title I.
Special ed funds are already spoken for.
I mean, some of these could be students that aren't new, that when they had IEP review meetings at the end of the year, there were accommodations added based off the data of their individual evaluation plan. So those are team decisions of how they're made. They're not decisions where we can see them, we can pull back and say, well, we have the money or not. It's not how that works. If
that team feels it's a necessity by federal law, we have to add it. We cannot predetermine or prejudge. What that team feels is best is what we have to add. That's the law.
Who's on the team?
The school psychologist, the parents, the classroom teacher, typically a special ed teacher. It all depends on the need of the child. A lot of times if they have some type of occupational therapy, we may have those people in the room. We may have people from the state level there, for example. It all depends on the need of the child and what the IEP specifies.
So, are they part-time, full-time?
They're all full-time.
8.
Yes.
What's the average?
District-wide.
What is the average cost of an aide total with insurance and benefits? What kind of money are we looking at?
I really can't say.
About 30,000 for everything, probably 35.
35.
That's
That's without numbers in front of me.
Well, we know health is, well, no, that's not the pay, that's with all benefits included. Okay.
No, I said 8.
Oh.
8.
Yeah, it does. It
It
seems
is.
like a large number, so I'm trying to decipher where this all of a sudden came from that we have
Well, without
8
disclosing
new
too much
students?
information.
New people?
They are new students.
To the district?
To the district.
Okay.
Mostly in the lower grade levels. And they are documented severe needs.
But not preschool, correct?
Correct.
Bottom line, we're federal mandates.
Correct.
So we don't really. It's kind of
Well,
voluntary, it is what
but
it
there,
is.
but there is, I mean, there is some choice on some of it. Not that I disagree with the diagnosis at all, but
Well,
there is
at
some
this-
room for,
How is there room though?
it's an assessment done with the group. The group
Correct, but-
defines
But
the
there
need.
has to be an overruling of the assessment in order to get it changed unless. something-
Right.
Oh,
Right.
that's not how that works.
No, let me clarify.
Yeah.
When you have a student on an IEP that comes into your district, you have to reevaluate in so many days, but to just yank because we can't afford it is a lawsuit that many
Oh,
districts
no,
have
no,
already.
nobody's suggesting
Okay.
that. We're not suggesting
Okay,
that at all.
but yes, I mean, these are students that have been in school for 2 to 3 years, and those needs have been identified, and they're not new needs.
Right.
But they're all, I guess, because I feel a little caught off guard, but if you're saying this because all these students that are, if the need for the aides are all because of new students, it makes sense to me. If it's not, I guess I'm a little surprised to hear about it.
For example, at one of our elementaries, we've gone from 15 students to a total of 32. So within those, we have both needing an access and one-on-one.
Okay.
So the
So it's
needs,
all new students.
they are all new students, yes.
And so to the process, when we obviously they moved into the district, so or they just started coming to the school district, whatever the reasons, that they came with an IEP
That is correct.
So our job then as a district is to just accept the IEP as presented and move on, or assess it, which occurred, and validate it, whatever that is, and take action.
That's correct. We have to validate. And I would say, we do have the autism scholarship, and we have several students coming back who left our district for the autism scholarship and those funds for private education, and now decided to come back. So that is one example.
This will be reevaluated every year, or this could be every year. This could stay.
Every IEP student has a reevaluation, or an evaluation, and then every 3 years a reevaluation where they are retested.
Right.
Yes.
It'd be
And
pretty precise.
this is one of the things is, when we do a 5-year forecast, as well as we do it, we just never know
Right.
when students are going to move in or move out with these kinds of needs.
And these students are considered catastrophic needs students. And at the end of the school year, we complete paperwork on them, and we calculate all of their costs associated with that student. So you do receive more funding back from the state for those students.
In the following year.
Yes.
That'll increase our funding, is what you're saying.
Yes.
So,
Following year.
our federal funds.
Well,
So that-
you'll receive actually state funding back for them, and they will increase their federal funding. But you actually receive catastrophic aid for them from the state.
And we probably would have been coming to you a little sooner, but of course, we have all new administrators who are trying to, exactly schedule where students are going to be. So I do believe this is an unusual circumstance, that we would be coming this late right before school.
So 8 full-time aides to cover how many new IEP
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
How many, you said 8, he's saying 8 aides to cover how many students, and I think she was saying that she doesn't know, because some of them are split between 2
I can tell you at
kids.
least 4 of the 8 have to be one-on-one aides.
4 of them have to be one-on-one.
So, all day. And we are moving some around from, for example, we have a aide we're going to move most likely from Dennis to 5 Points, because that student is moving from Dennis to 5 Points. And we are shifting some. And as the year goes on, we do want these students to become more independent and not need a one-on-8, particularly as they get in the older grades. We want them to learn, but at this point, we are talking a lot of first and second graders that have physical or mental needs that we have to support them with. How many what?
You have a count of students, he's asking if there's a number of students. The 8 aides will be assisting how many students is his question.
Well, again, at least, I believe 4 of them are going to be one-on-one aides, so that's 4 kids. And then the other 4 will work with small groups of students.
So 2, 3, 4, something like that per aide.
Of the ones that aren't one-on-one, yes.
Depends on what the IEP.
And again, you
Depends
have
on the
to,
IEP.
sometimes it's,
Yeah.
an aide goes with them
We'll get
to a
into more
special
details.
because
To
it's
be
art,
honest.
music, or gym, and they, with just one teacher, they
To
aren't
be
able.
honest, I'm not real comfortable getting into too much.
I'm not either,
detail
but
on this
I
here.
don't want to feel like I'm
well,
not
that's fine. I'll
being
take the heat for it.
transparent.
We're not going to get into any more detail.
Because it's a very touchy issue.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
We're okay. But if you need more information, I'd be happy to send it to you, okay?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to have to vote on that on the 29th, right?
Sooner.
Or sooner. We may have to
Before school
convene an
starts.
emergency meeting.
Yes.
You have to tell us when you'll need that. As long as 3 people can make it, we're good.
But we probably want to put it closer to the school starting, because we don't want to have to do it again.
That's the 24th. What do you mean, closer?
That would,
24th is
The
Friday.
24th?
24th is
26th.
Saturday.
24th is Saturday.
We start the 26th.
the
Yeah,
22nd was a Thursday, correct?
Yeah, but we're not going to have that meeting.
Right.
So, anyway, just let us know. We just need 3 people, so we're good.
20 would be an option.
I'm actually going to be back. I'll be back. I'm going to be back in town the morning of the 22nd. We meet that late, but I don't know. It doesn't matter if it's next week or, really it would make a difference between next week or the 22nd.
I'd say, like I said, a little
Closer.
We still have.
We need to already feel free.
is really good.
22nd and beyond, I'm in before that. Or if we have free, it's all matters.
I'll be wherever you need me to be.
I think you and Mark are going to be.
I have no.
Paint murals, you're painting
I
on
am.
that day. Okay, so we need a motion to move into executive session for RC 121.22G1, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. I need a motion. Mr. Miller, I need a second.
Second.
Mr. Regano, roll call?
Miller,
Yes.
Regano,
Yes.
Bowles,
Yes.
Troni,
Yes.
Poole.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we're going to come back into executive session, and there will be no action taken afterwards.